you the relationship among the islands. And where would you use per visitor night kind of expenditure? Well, you would use it in the kind of thing that you're trying to think of well, what does a person spend a night? So if I'm a booze cruise, for example, and I'm looking at New Providence, well, you know, a visitor spends $260 a night. I should be able to get a piece of that action. When you look at that from the perspective of different kinds of visitor, whether it's somebody here on a honeymoon, or whether it's somebody here just on vacation, or somebody here staying at a casino, that per visitor night gives them some indication of who they should go after. Maybe a casino goer is much more into booze cruise and they have a higher expenditure, so that's the group you go after. If you're looking at the per party night, you're now looking at a possibility of trying to understand what you might attract in terms of a group. And this may be something that might be of interest to somebody who's renting a boat. So they know basically they are going to, in Nassau, they're going to get about $690 as a party per night of stay here. So they think, well, what's my price? How does it fit into that $690 a day expenditure that they have? Then you might look at the per party expenditure, and this might be something that is very useful in terms of a hotel. Now this takes a look at the profile by the various kinds of purchases by country of origin. I mentioned earlier the average expenditure sometimes is very good in terms of an excellent way in terms of discerning what are the places or the origins or the different kinds of markets you should go after. Now this slide shows that in the main per visitor night, they're all around $200 no matter where they come from, except for the UK visitors slightly below. So on a per day basis, they're all spending roughly the same thing. But we all know a UK visitor and a Canadian visitor overall spends more on their total trip than a US visitor. That's not because they spend overall more, it's because they stay longer, because an American visitor spends as much as a UK visitor for every day of stay. They just don't stay as long as somebody from Europe and from Canada. Then you can take a look at this and see the breakdown on the various kinds of expenditures we're talking about. And in this slide you can see, of course, as was earlier demonstrated on the pie chart, that it, in all cases, accommodations followed by meals. Although it's interesting to note that people coming from the United States look like they spend a little bit more on meals than the other destinations, and UK visitors a little less on meals outside their accommodation. And you could also see that Canadians seem to spend a little bit more on other purchases, as do people, all other countries outside of US, Canada, and the UK. Now let's take a look at this by another market segment, if you will. Trip purpose. Now this surely starts to show some real differences between people. The average vacationer spending on a per visitor night basis, on a per person basis, per day, if you will, $200. But look at this. In this case, somebody coming here on a wedding spends over $300 for that visit, with a high proportionate being spent on the accommodation, a much higher proportionate being spent on commercial accommodations, and a higher proportion being spent on popular purchases. What are they doing? Probably buying gifts for their people who came and attended the wedding, or buying gifts for people who are at the wedding. If you take a look at the casino, for example, you see they have a much higher expenditure, average expenditure, if you will, about $100, about $50 on meals. So people who come and gamble like to eat as well. So this starts to give you some idea of where these different markets are spending their money on a per day basis. And then you look at the type of accommodation. I mentioned this earlier. You can see one of the highest expenditures is $250 by people staying in hotels. And one of the smallest expenditures are on people staying with friends and relatives or in their own residence, which further explains the slide earlier. People who have their own residence or are staying with friends and relatives tend to come here a lot more than people who are coming to stay in hotels. So you can see from this that the proportion changes, and that as you get into residence and condos, those other purchases become more important than if you're staying in a hotel. I hope you can see that from this survey, you can get a great deal of information that can assist the businessman in making decisions about who he needs to attract to his business, that can assist the investor in the level of understanding how much return on investment he may get, to the straw market vendor who might understand how much they're going to make in the run of a year from attracting somebody by providing better quality service, to any number of larger things such as understanding just how much the tourism industry and how the breadth of where the tourism dollar goes into the economy, into 65 separate expenditure areas, All this information is available to you. All this information can be used in assisting in the kinds of decisions that government, individuals, and businesses have to make day in, day out. Now, I'd like to end this presentation by having my staff present to you 13 interesting facts that we garnered from the surveys, which we think will guide you a lot in using this information.
Number 1, 4 of the 9 accommodations used by stopovers generate 97% of expenditure on accommodations. They are hotel and temporary villas, condos, etc., marinas, private villas, condos, and timeshares. Number 2, the most popular activities are scuba diving, snorkeling, nature sightseeing tours, and attractions and historic places. Number 3, the most lucrative activities are scuba diving, snorkeling, fishing, nature sightseeing attractions and tours, historic places, and entertainment at the hotel. Number 4, entertainment at a hotel generates 4 times as much money as any entertainment away from a hotel. Number 5, by far more revenue from popular purchases lands in the pockets of local vendors and not in vendors located in hotels. Number 6, items sold at hotels account for at least 30% of purchases for wedding ceremonies, china, crystal, and t-shirts. Number 7, stopovers spend almost twice as much per night of stay on meals at a hotel property than elsewhere. Number 8, stopover parties spend about $256 per night of stay on activities such as scuba diving, snorkeling, and touring.
Number 9, jewelry purchases rack up the greatest revenue among popular purchases, 4 times as much as straw work and over twice as much as the next largest category, weddings. Number 10, hair braiders earned $1.2 million in 2008, 70% of it generated away from the hotels. Number 11, for every dollar spent on straw work, $1.80 is spent on t-shirts. Number 12, if you exclude meals, popular activities, and accommodations, the top 5 expenditures are: number 1, jitney, bus, taxi, road transportation. Number 2, jewelry. Number 3, groceries and household supplies. Number 4, motor fuels and oil. Number 5, boat rental and charters. Finally, gamblers either eat a lot or buy the most expensive menu items or eat at the most expensive place or some combinations thereof because they spend the most on meals daily. For further information, you can call the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism Research and Statistics Department at 302-2000 and ask for the Bahamas Visitors Expenditure Survey Technical Report. Thank you.